Welcome to Our Future is Kind, a podcast exploring how we build the future we want to live in, one kind act at a time. I'm your host, Michael G. Neese, president of Our Future is Kind, and your trusted companion as we search out kindness strategies we can use in our everyday lives. Together, as we chase the idea of building a kinder future, we will interview experts in kindness, team building, human motivation, corporate culture building, relationships, plus politicians, artists, and those with a vision for a healthy and kind future, one we all want to live in and deserve to enjoy together. In addition to interviews, we will consider positive depictions of humanity's future in art, literature, the movies, and media. And we will issue kindness challenges each week, give an update about Our Future is Kind, the company, and what it's doing to stay true to its mission. So, let's dive in. Today we have a special guest, Lesa Edwards. She's a certified executive and leadership development coach, a certified job search strategist, and one of about 23 master resume writers in the world. She lives in Tallahassee, Florida, near her son and granddaughter, and has 2 scent hounds that absolutely, positively refuse to listen. She's also a podcaster, and I had the great joy of being on one of her 2 podcasts, The Exclusive Career with Lesa Edwards, not too long ago. So, Lesa Edwards, welcome to the program.
I am so glad to be here, Michael. I look forward to this conversation.
Our last conversation was so much fun. I feel like I learned a lot from you, and you're just so warm and welcoming. Clearly, you've been doing this podcasting thing for a bit.
It is not my first rodeo. I started back in 2017, and I have a funny story if I can tell it. It's a very quick one, but
Of course.
I wanted to podcast. So I was working with a coach, and this is so dating, but she was like, you should do a teleseminar. Like, get people on the phone at 9 o'clock on a Wednesday morning and let them listen to you for an hour. There was, if it's possible to have negative energy around something, I had negative energy. I could not get off the ground with that idea. But what I really wanted to do, because I had started listening to podcasts, is I wanted to podcast. But Rain Man-esque, I had an idea in my head that podcasting cost $5,000, full stop. There was no question, right? It was just $5,000. And I was listening to a podcast, and it was, I think it was about like questioning assumptions or something. And there were a couple areas in my life, one of which was podcasting, that I was like, okay, there was that. And then I had a problem with my car that I was convinced was going to cost me probably another $5,000. So as it turns out, as you well know, podcasting does not cost $5,000. And it was $50 to fix my car that had a piece dragging along underneath the carriage. And so when I questioned that assumption, it was kind of like off to the races at that point. And of course, I didn't know what I didn't know. So I had to like learn. I didn't even know what questions to ask. But it was that interesting belief in my head that held me back for so much longer than it should have.
I understand those limiting beliefs that we all get into, right? You paint something in a certain way, and then that portrait hangs on the wall for a while, right?
It sure does.
Well, I'm really glad to have you here on our Future is Kind podcast. This is our chance to talk about what a future should look like and how we can build it together. And so a lot of exciting things. But while I gave an introduction of you, I always like to have my guests tell the audience a little bit more from your perspective. I mean, what really makes you, you?
I get the question a lot, Michael, about how do you get into this field? Because oftentimes I'm talking to people who didn't know that what I do is actually a thing. And so they're very curious about that. And people come to it from, human resources, backgrounds, recruiting, various ways. But I spent 20 plus years in higher education career services. So I cut my teeth at a university in Georgia, moved out to the Midwest to be the director of a career center out there. So the genesis of what I do was in helping college students figure out really who they were as it relates to the world of work. In some cases, what they wanted to major in, and in other cases, here's my major. They asked the question, what can I do with it? Which I always responded with, that's the wrong question. The question is, what do I want to do with it? But helping them figure out what we call in higher ed the first destination. So that first career move as they graduate from college. And so that's how I cut my teeth. And in 2011, I left that world. I had started an earlier iteration. My business has gone through some metamorphosis and started an earlier version of it, but I left in 2011 to do this full time. And I think to answer the question, what makes me me is I call it the constellation of attributes. So having the advanced degree, the certifications that I have, being one of 23 master resume writers in the world, and putting that together with someone who's extremely insightful and incisive is a word that was used. I had to actually look that up when they said I was incisive. I wasn't sure what they were saying. It was good or bad. But insightful, and as hopefully you can tell, I have a really great sense of humor. And so I think that's very useful when clients are mired down in career, drama of some kind that is very serious to them, is impacting not only the 40 hours a week that they're at work, but every other aspect of their life. And to help them bring some levity and perspective to that at the same time, helping them to solve those problems, and helping them to recognize what they should own in the issue and what is not theirs to own is incredibly valuable. So I think that's kind of what I bring to the table that makes me me.
It's a lot. There's so many great things that are in there. Something that you just said sparked in me this thought process. You're asking people to not try to own things that are outside of their control.
Mm-hmm.
That's got to be a big piece of what you talk about. Can you expand on that a little bit? Because I think, in today's world, I think it's easy to tune into the news and feel like we have no control, to kind of rail at the system and feel like, oh, I can't really do anything. And then we give up all ownership over everything. So how do you help people determine what's inside of their control?
And conversely, when I understood the concept of locus of control, like where do you fall in that continuum of what you control and what you don't control? I realized that my locus of control was so internal that I was like, oh, the wars must be I must have done that. There were wars going on over, and I was like, that's my problem. So I had to lighten up off of that. So it shows up in terms of what's in their control with the job search piece, where they take responsibility and fault when they don't hear back from an employer, or they get through 1-2 interviews and then don't get the job offer. And instead of having a better perspective on that, so that's one of the pieces there. In terms of when I am doing more career coaching, so there's kind of two worlds that I live in. One is I am in a job search right now, and that's the primary focus of what they want help with for me. Sure. The other piece is folks who are that horizon to change jobs is a little bit longer, and what they want to work on right now is, the poo has hit the fan at work, or they've been given feedback that's pretty critical to their professional development, and they really want to work on that. And so I think a perfect example is a client that I had yesterday, and it was our first session together, and she had told me, like, all the things that we're going to do together. I've got this situation where people keep interrupting me in meetings, and I'm coming in kind of, as we teased it out, kind of coming in armed for battle, because I know I'm going to be interrupted, and I don't like how I'm having to show up because I'm having to be confrontational in these meetings. And so we worked through that yesterday. Mm-hmm. And one of the big pieces of it was she was so concerned about how this person, so we talked about her having a one-on-one separate from the meetings with this person, letting him know how this affects her, and trying to work on an understanding of why he's doing that and how they might be able to work together better. And so she was thinking in terms of what's he going to do? He's going to laugh at me. And then he's going to go tell all the other guys, because she works in an industry where she's like the only woman there. So we had to really work on separating that she is actually standing in her power and showing emotional intelligence by going to this man and addressing this directly with him and trying to work this out. And she cannot control how he responds or what he does with it, but she is being emotionally mature to do this. So it's those things. Yeah.
Yeah. It's wonderful that you're coaching, for this particular problem. I know that during the Obama White House, there was the highest percentage, and somebody check me on this, I'm sure one of my audience members will, but there was the highest percentage of female representation in most of the meetings that he would have across a given week or a given month. And he noticed that some female, team member would say something and then would totally get ignored. But then one or two voices later, another female would chime in and say, "Oh, did you hear what Betty had said about
Mhm.
this idea?" And then could advocate for that. Well, he noticed that this was going on. And he said, let's check ourselves a little bit because I'm wondering if it's just like standard procedure for men to talk over women. And if that is a problem, and if it is, we need to address that as well. I love the strategy, but I think we should also address the root. And I found that fascinating.
Yes, that is exactly the kind of conversation because we really looked at it from a 360-degree perspective in terms of how is this same person reacting with the other men in the room and how are the other men working with each other? Like what's the whole dynamic so that I could get a really good sense of the culture of this company. But yeah, the female issue. So she gets to have that meeting on Tuesday, and I can't wait to hear how it goes for her.
Well, I'm wondering, Lisa, since you have been doing this a bit, and you've been coaching people for a while, do you have advice for allies like me, people who may have a little bit more authority in a given room, or may have a bit more, expectation that we should be heard more? Do you have advice for us so that we can also use our good intentions to make sure everybody gets a chance to be heard?
That's such a good question because I think that gender issue can show up, in how our body language is, right? And so I think in general, men do a better job, especially majority men, because that's kind of how they've been raised to be the champion of whatever they're doing. But for those who haven't been cultured that way, or for the women listening, I think it has a lot to do with how do you walk into the room? How do you, what is your posture? What is your stance? How are you dressed? Now, I'm not saying everybody comes in, a suit if that's not the culture, but also, maybe a sloppy t-shirt is not the answer either. So how are you showing up? Where are you sitting and how are you sitting in the room? Are you slouched back or are you sitting up? Are you making eye contact? What is your volume, right? And there's not one right answer there, but read the room. What is your volume when you speak? And are you sort of with your body and your voice commanding to be listened to, right? And again, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to be the loudest person. One of the things I worked on with the client yesterday was there is a habit of everybody like almost yelling at each other, like they're really loud. And so we talked about how just modulate your voice down and be like, you're probably senior enough to remember the old E.F. Hutton commercials. When E.F. Hutton talks, everyone listens.
Right.
I lose anybody under a certain age with that analogy, but it's that idea of just come in, doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes that's not the most effective thing, but with your posture and with your presence, own the room. And I think the other piece of it is choose wisely where you speak and what you say. Because some people, I don't know if you've experienced this. I can remember one person I was in a lot of meetings with when I lived in Missouri. And I kind of tuned her out as soon as she began speaking because she always just went on forever and ever and ever. And I was like, I never got value out of what she said. So going forward, if there was something valuable there, I wasn't hearing it. So making sure that you are selective in what you contribute and that it is um, succinct and impactful. How's that?
Love it. Love it. Yeah. An awful lot about intentionality. It's about mindfulness about yourself. And can you
Mhm.
talk a little bit about that? I mean, you're coaching, and I imagine that people come to you with a lot of questions and a lot of ideas. How much is self-reflection a part of what you teach?
Self-reflection is so important to, and again, there's different cultures of companies and different situations that my clients would find themselves in. So it isn't that you necessarily, like if we're thinking about a project plan, it isn't that you have to come in with all the answers, because sometimes that is the absolute opposite of what you should do. You should come in willing to listen. So that part of that self-reflection and intentionality is understanding the context in which you are leading or being a member, whatever your role is. What is my place here? Not that I'm trying to limit myself, but I am trying to maximize the role that I am supposed to be in. So if I'm in a leadership role, who am I leading? What are their roles? What are the personalities as I understand them? How can I best lead this team? And being intentional about those things. I think so many leaders think solely in terms of, if they go into a situation, what's the plan that I need to give these people? I don't think that's what they need to be focused on. How do I want to show up so that I get the best from the people that I'm leading?
Love it. That's you're really digging into the meat of where the person is and meeting them where they are, so you can have that great discussion. It sounds like you are master of coaching, and part of that mastery, I'm wondering, how often do you have somebody come to you with stories of people who were deeply unkind to them, or people who were incredibly kind, giving lots of grace, giving lots of support and help? I mean, do you hear lots of both kinds of stories?
I sadly probably hear more of the unkindness than I do the kindness. But particularly, there is I think if we were to graph it out, there would be a causal relationship between the success of the people I'm talking to and their focus on that kindness, that mentors that they've worked with, leaders. I love it when I have clients who tell me that they left and gone to another company, and employees from the previous company have followed them and been able to work with them in the new company. I think that speaks volumes. I certainly coach a lot of people. Yesterday this gentleman was kind of a colleague, a peer that she has to work with. They both report to the same boss. And she, frankly, by all accounts, is way better at her job because it's an accountability piece for like projects. And he's kind of like, kind of fly by the seat of his pants. And I think a little bit of it is him being called on the carpet for like numbers aren't adding up and things like that. So yeah, I help people, and that gets really back to what we talked about at the outset, is helping people who are having difficult relationships, especially in the present, with a coworker, a boss, whatever, to figure out what's their part, what they can own, how they can approach the situation, and what is out of their control. And on one hand, that's painful because we want to change that. We want that person to be different. But on the other hand, it's very liberating, right? Because the only person we have to worry about in this scenario in the whole wide world is ourselves.
Right. That's what we bring to the table every time. So that's the only thing we can assuredly have some influence over, right?
What's the expression? Wherever you are, you're there.
That's right.
There you are.
It's a Buckaroo Banzai movie quote, I think. Um, well, wonderful. I'm curious, when here at Our Future is Kind, when we're thinking about how to build the future and what the future should look like and how to infuse more kindness into all of it, we seek out people who are just like you, people who are trying to be in service to others, people who are trying to lift others through their work. Is that how you see it? I mean, is that part of the calling?
It absolutely is. And what I have often said to people about what I do is you can't be in the line at Starbucks, and I'm not a Starbucks fan. Lucky Goat's my coffee shop. Can't be in line at the Lucky Goat for more than 5 minutes and not hear the people around you talking about their work, sometimes good, sometimes bad, but they're going to talk about it. So I think it's so important to understand that what we do for the 40-ish hours a week that we do our vocation does not just affect the 40 hours a week that we do our vocation. It
Mhm.
is to affect our personal lives, our friendships, our relationships, and it's going to affect our sleep. So we have to get this right. And there's plenty of data out there, anecdotal and hard science data, that proves that in many cases we are not doing it right. And so that's my little piece of the world. Unlike you, I don't go into the company as a whole and help them to be more kind, but I can work on it one leader at a time. And that's how I see myself as being in service.
The leaders are the ones who are making all of these grand decisions within companies, and they're generally the ones who are in charge of organizations of 10 people or 500 people. So by working with them, you're affecting all of those. The ripples go outward to all of their direct reports, right?
Yes, yes. I like to live in that belief.
Well, it's wonderful. If you'll go with me on a really cool mind experiment, we have this thought experiment of going into a time machine together. And so, Lesa, we're stepping in and we're dialing it up for 2125. We're stepping 100 years into the future. If I tell you that we did everything right, everything so beautifully, everything so perfectly, that when we step out of the time machine, we're going to be in the ideal future. Okay, so we step out. What are you looking for to find out if I'm right?
Because my focus is on careers and career management and the job search, I want everyone to be happy doing work that they love, that contributes and is meaningful to them. One of the things I've had to tease out as a professional doing what I do is that different personalities derive pleasure and satisfaction from their work in different ways. So I'm not asking for everyone's satisfaction to look like, helping the sick or, fixing their careers, but they find satisfaction in a job well done. They have wonderful bosses who are concerned about them, not about themselves. They are putting their workers first. The systems within these companies is set up to help develop people, to take care of them as holistically as possible, because we are not just automatons who go to work and go home every day. And this work environment is so inspiring and kind and motivating. And if you think about that, what that would do for the products that we are producing, whatever that is, whether it's a piece of clothing or an idea or the newest drug to save lives, we're going to do it better and more effectively. So that's the dream that I have for 100 years from now, Michael.
So it sounds like you're going from company to company, universities, associations, you're going from place to place and finding out how they're treating their people and how many smiles there are on the faces that you encounter. Is that right?
Yeah, people, I mean, every survey that comes out is just like, we love it. And the only reason that people are changing jobs is another opportunity that's even greater comes along. No one's leaving because their boss is horrible. No one's leaving because the company has shown them the door because of, financial issues with the company, for example. It's just this beautiful work world that is then making our personal lives so much more enriched. Because here's the thing, they're also getting paid a fair wage for what they do. It's not all the same. We're not all getting paid the same, but they're getting paid enough so that they don't have to work 3 jobs, because you can imagine you can't have that ideal environment that I just described if you're working 3 shifts a day.
If you're stressed out of your mind, getting from your second job to your third job.
Exactly. And your old car that keeps breaking down because you're not making enough money. So the money piece has to be there. But if you think about how much more productive the workforce is becoming because of this world I've created, they should be able to pay those people pretty well.
Let's hope. So, what are the things that need to happen between now and then? Because that's the other part of this equation. I mean, if we get to that ideal state and you think about like turning on the news and you hear lots of difficulties, people impoverished, people losing their homes, people getting laid off, how do we get from where we are in this moment in history into that much brighter, better future?
It has to start with leadership, doesn't it? It has to start with 2 things. So we've got some people who are really great leaders who could be even better or potential for leadership. So we give them the training, the mentoring, the on the job experience that they need to be fully successful in those roles. And we are unafraid to say to someone, you're not leadership material. Or here's the thing that I always find interesting is when people, I can tell when a client comes to me and they love to lead people, it is central to who they are versus to get the job I want at the level I want and the pay I want, I got to lead some folks. So I want us to have another option for these people that is not disgraceful in any way to them because they're still probably got where they are now and not so happy at. They got there because they were really good at doing their job. They were good individual contributors or something. So let's figure out how to fully compensate them and let them be what they really are good at and not try to make them into leaders when that is neither their calling nor their desire.
That resonates so thoroughly with me. Lisa, I was in pharma for a long time as a computer programmer.
I would have
And
never guessed that,
I
Michael.
know.
I was in pharma, but I didn't know what you. I was like, is he creating is he a scientist? What's the story?
I've been in 5 different industries, but that's probably the one that most people would not guess at. Just because I don't typically, like most people don't see a computer programmer and then go, oh, Michael Neese, he fits that mold.
Yeah, no.
Um, but I can't tell you the number of people who were very, very technical, analytical, very deeply, deeply gifted at what they did and how thoroughly they thought through things, but got promoted and promoted and promoted to the point where now they had to have a high EQ. They had to really listen to people. They had to foster their growth and just hated it and tuned it out and did everything they could to avoid it like the plague and still just, focus on, working on the Tinker Toys, like I'm going to do the technical things
Yep.
that are really fun, but I'm going to ignore all my people until I have to do, what is that? A performance review? Sure. I guess everybody gets a mediocre score. Why would that be a problem, right?
Right. No, it's the Peter principle, right? That concept was created back in what the 80s, I think, something along
A
there.
while back. Yeah.
Yeah, that moving to your highest level of incompetence. We do it over and over and over again, and we can look in companies, anywhere in the world and
Yeah.
see examples of it.
Right. Yeah. And glory be to those who actually rise to the occasion and learn how to be a great people manager. I had lots of great people managers. So anybody who's listening in, don't think that I'm being critical of anybody I specifically ever reported to. I got lucky quite often, but I also noticed there were some of my friends who did not get lucky and who were reporting to not great managers. So.
And that's really been my experience, Michael. I can't honestly, and it's sad, but I can't tell you that I've ever had a great manager. And so, someone in that situation can go kind of two ways, become a replica of how they've been managed, or decide that it stops here. And that's kind of the way I've approached it.
That sounds like people who survived trauma and now have to not pass on the abuse. It's interesting that that also applies in the workplace.
Absolutely.
So tell me, Lisa, you must have days that are not great, or you have a client call and you feel really bad for how that client is doing. Things are just not going their way, and it seems hopeless. It's a hard day. What do you do to get re-inspired and to remember that there is light still to be found in this universe?
I don't know that I do it in the normal way, if there is such a thing. I derive, and it's inspiration. I don't know if inspiration is the right word, but joy certainly is the right word. I could watch videos of animals being animals on social media. If there is a picture of a woman doing yoga and then a donkey walks in front of the camera and does this and looks like he's smiling, like I can watch that all day long. Like I've got one now of a camel. They had a little, like one of those, not even a kiddie pool, but it's like a splash pad in the
Hmm.
farm area. And this camel comes over and rolls around in the water. Like Give it all to me. I don't want to hear dogs with human voices. I want to see animals being animals. So much joy, and that's what I share with my friends. So that's a big area. And in terms of working through things, which I think is probably, again, not necessarily inspiration, but it can be inspirational, is as an extrovert, I've got a lot of introversion in me. I want to journal. I want to step away from any kind of noise, people. I want to journal and work things out. One of the things that I've been doing of late is there's an issue in my personal life that I want to be better at. And so I went back to kind of the genesis. I do work with a Myers-Briggs type indicator. So I went back to my personality type information, particularly when my personality type is what is called in the grip, which is a prolonged stressful experience. So I'm pairing that. I'm learning about internal family systems. And then I'm also pairing that with like journaling and, what these things that are going on in my life and how's my personality, how's my internal family systems reacting to all of this and trying to make sense of all of it. And so that's a very introverted activity. Again, I'm an extrovert, but that's been very hopeful for me, giving me hope. And I think that's ultimately inspiring. So again, it's a little bit of a different way to go about it, but that's inspiring to me. So watch videos of animals and turn inward and figure out what's going on at the root.
All of it. I think the internal work is something that, um, gosh, I mean, I've always thought of myself as being a reflective person, but I want to say in my 40s and 50s, I absolutely have turned inward to try to do some work to try to understand better what's going on in here and how is it manifesting itself out there, because it's so important. I mean, how I show up for my kids, how I show up for my coworkers, how I show up for my parents. It all comes from in here, and what battles am I potentially fighting inside? Do you find that the more introspective you get, the more journaling you get, the more you deal with your ENFJ,
That's
Myers-Briggs,
right. We're the same. We're the
the
same. Yeah,
same? Yeah, I mean, the more you know about that, do you find that things open up for you in the outer world?
absolutely. And one of the things about, and we don't want to get technical about personality type, but research has shown that as you get into kind of midlife, so 40s, 50s, you start to have access or start to have insight into the parts of your personality that are unconscious at an earlier age. And I put this together very recently. The insight that I had was, oh, because I've always said that the problems that you deal with when you get to our age in life are the hard ones. You've dealt with the easy things, the things that were like, oh, now that you brought it to my attention, I'll never be that way again, or I'll never do that again. Now we're dealing with, some what, right? And now I put it together with the fact that we are getting insight into what has been unconscious about our personality up until this point. And that's really tough stuff. So, and when we work through that, the payoff is so much greater than anything that we've dealt with the earlier stuff that was much easier for us.
So what do you do when you encounter somebody who isn't doing this work? Somebody who they have a fixed mindset, they're not thinking about growth. They might say, "Oh yeah, I had some stuff from my past, but I don't need to work through it." How do you encounter people like that? How do you handle that?
Very rarely in my practice because, quite frankly, people, as you know, they're paying a gob of money. And as you said when you were on my podcast, like, okay, I'm just going to go home and spend time with the kids if this is where we're going to stay. So I don't encounter that a lot. Sometimes they have to be made aware of the blind spots. But in my personal life, quite honestly, Michael, I've closed off some relationships. I've completed some relationships
Mm.
that were not healthy for me to be around because I can't change them. I don't want to. I'm busy. Um, they've chosen this. They've chosen to remain fixed. And some of those people, frankly, I'm related to. But for my own, at some point, I think we all have to say, no matter what, that's not a healthy relationship for me to be around. So do I make it very, we're going to see each other at Thanksgiving because, the fam's going to be together. Or is this someone that I want to entirely complete the relationship with?
Right. Right. Hard decisions have to be made sometimes. Seasons of life where the person fit in for a while and then they didn't, or it wasn't a problematic relationship for a while and then it became so.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that all too often we either don't identify, we just like keep plugging through with that relationship and don't stop and look at what has happened and what it's doing to us, or we think it's going to change, they're going to change, and we just are unwilling to put that line on that relationship and say that's complete.
It's hard work, but it's good work if you can get it, right?
Exactly.
So I am curious. Can you tell all of the listeners here how they can get into your podcasts and what do you do with the two of them? Because I know you have two separate podcasts. Tell us about that.
Yes, I just brought the exclusive Career Coach podcast back last week, or this week as we are recording, so early August, from a 6-month hiatus. So in the beginning of the year, I made a change in my business and I went kind of all the way over to the other side, and now I'm kind of coming back to the middle. So I have these two groups that I work with, and I mentioned them earlier. One is more immediate job search. The other one is more long-term career coaching, dealing with whatever's holding them back, and some job search. And so the old podcast, the exclusive Career Coach podcast, is going to be all job search from here on out. So very much resume writing, interviewing, salary, all the pieces. And I'm actually going back to episode 1 and bringing that content whenever it's appropriate. So not every episode will be brought into the future, but I will bring it into 2025 and beyond with new content, this is what you need to know about this topic in the present. The other podcast is the exclusive career podcast, and it is all career management, executive development, leadership, all the bigger kind of strategic pieces of a career. And that one I'm going to be focused on having more guests on, including wonderful people like you.
Well, it's wonderful. So I would encourage everybody to look in the show notes. You'll be able to find those two podcasts listed in your show notes so that you can tune into Lesa whenever you want and glean some more of her great wisdom. Lesa, what else are you working on? What are the other things that you want to tell our listeners about?
Well, I want to make sure everybody finds me on LinkedIn. I'm super easy to find because I have a really large footprint on there. So I'm just look for Lesa Edwards. Spell my first name right. Otherwise, I don't know who you'll get. But Lesa. What else am I working on? I am just building out these two pieces now that I've decided to kind of come back. I've really streamlined what I offer into these two buckets. And because my coach last year said to me, she's like, you got too much going on, girl. Not so trying to streamline that and just really work at it. There's no big new projects. It's refine. I'm in that phase with my business of refining and upping my game with what I'm currently doing and getting that word out. So it's not like there's anything huge new on the horizon. It's just more and better of what I've been doing for the past 14 years.
It's wonderful. And the laser focus sounds like it's going to be really helpful to people who reach out to you. So everybody check out on LinkedIn, look for Lesa, Lesa Edwards, and get into her orbit because you want to be there. You want to find out how to improve your work life and find that really cool job and get that extra, that extra little edge so that it'll help you be a better leader. So
absolutely. I'm here for you.
So, Lesa Edwards, I'm so appreciative of you being on this show. It was a wonderful conversation yet again.
Thank you, Michael. I'm thrilled to be here, and you are a wonderful host.
This week's Kindness Challenge. After every meeting, ask yourself, did I help make a space where people felt heard? Sometimes kindness means inviting a quieter voice to speak or gently calling out a pattern others miss. Also, show up to your next meeting with observed patterns in mind and a personal strategy for infusing more kindness. Want to stay inspired in the face of great danger and difficulty? Lesa Edwards has a path to staying grounded and inspired. First, watch animals just being animals. Donkeys, camels, and splash pads highly recommended. Second, let go of people who choose to stay fixed in unhealthy patterns. Thanks again for listening to our Future is Kind podcast, a podcast in search of a kinder future. Go out there and do something kind.